You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean T. And in addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV. Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. How we doing, Sean?
I wish the Packers are still playing football right now. But if you want to get prepared for the next season, or if you want to go to some Bucks or Brewers game or get ready for Summerfest in Wisconsin, you can talk to our sponsor, Ticket King, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. That's who sponsors our show for more than 30 years. They have been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans as well as Bucks, Brewers, and Summerfest tickets. Find them on the web at theticketking.com. That's theticketking.com, or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. You watch every episode of No Huddle Radio with Gil and myself on Packers Talk Network on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type Packers Talk Network in the search bar, click on the PackersTalk.com link with the green background, the yellow goalpost. Click on the bell, subscribe, turn notifications on, join the discussion, chat with us live. Obviously, the Packers season is over, but it's we're still going to be here. We're going to be here all throughout the year and everything like that, because we don't really have much hobbies outside of talking Packer football, right, Gil?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, that's but obviously a lot of stuff happening right now in the coaching world. There's a lot of head coach openings. We talked about a couple of years ago, Gil, when the Packers hired Jeff Hafley. They lured him away from Boston College, where he was a head coach. Before that, he was the D coordinator for a very good Ohio State defense. And Jeff Hafley, we figured one of two things was going to happen. He was either going to be terrible and we would be called for his head, or he was going to be a head coach within 2 to 3 years. And he's a head coach. Go figure. He got hired by the Miami Dolphins by former Packers VP of Player Personnel, John Eric Sullivan, who's the new GM of the Miami Dolphins, to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, signed a 5-year deal. So the Packers are looking for a new D coordinator. And Gil, it's obviously a huge loss. We really liked Jeff Hafley. He was a big bright spot at the defensive coordinator room, essentially, over the last few years. Who do we want to replace as the Packers' next defensive coordinator? There's a lot of names out there, a lot of speculation. Remember, Jeff Hafley came out of nowhere. We were thinking they were going to go multiple ways, and then Jeff Hafley, it's like, oh, wow, they just lured this guy away from Boston College. Who do we want to see as the Packers' next defensive coordinator?
Yeah, more than who, I think it's easier at this point, although I will discuss some names, but it's easier to discuss what I'm looking for in a defensive coordinator. And I think there's a couple of things. Number one of the things that made Jeff Hafley so much better than Joe Barry was his ability to make in-game adjustments.
Yes.
And whoever we hire, A, I want them to be able to make in-game adjustments, and B, and it's kind of related but not the same, I want them to have a background in more than one defensive system, because that helps them make adjustments and be more flexible in the way they approach defenses. I think the other thing is this. I don't know if at this point in time, if the Packers are ready to take a gamble on somebody who hasn't done it before. That, here's a team that has Super Bowl expectations this year, taking a chance on somebody who has been, a DB coach or a defensive line coach or whatever other assistant position they could have had, but never was a defensive coordinator. That might be a very big gamble. You could either hit really big or it could blow up in your face really big, and the window isn't that long.
Yeah, versatility is the big thing. And just I want to see another D coordinator like Hafley who got the best out of what he had and made the best of what he had. The Packers at corner were a mess for the most part this year. But it wasn't that bad at times because Jeff Hafley he put together a lot of schemes to protect those corners quite a bit. And obviously having Micah Parsons up front, that's going to help any defensive coordinator at any time. But even when Micah Parsons went down, that first game against the Bears, really good. The next game against Baltimore, not so hot. The next game against Minnesota, they played pretty well against Minnesota's starting offense, essentially. And for the most part, again, against Chicago in the playoffs, they played pretty well until the final quarter. And that's the big thing is just the inability to finish was a problem. But just getting in that position and not being buried early because your defense was so inept, that wasn't a problem with Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley definitely got the most out of his guys. And I feel like where the Packers are right now, I'm kind of with you. I am with you where it wouldn't hurt to have a guy with prior defensive coordinating experience or head coaching experience even because former head coaches available who have defensive backgrounds. So it's another interesting little nugget right there. An interesting little thing on the coaching search. Matt LaFleur's got a lot of options right now for who he wants to hire as his next defensive coordinator.
He does have a lot of options. They've done a number of interviews already. And, unfortunately, his record on hiring coaches is, let's say, mixed at best.
Yeah.
And it does concern me a little bit that the other thing that I'm going to add to, if I was sketching out my perfect defensive coordinator, I don't mind somebody who Matt LaFleur has worked with before, but I don't want somebody who he's too close with because I want whoever comes in to be able to be critical and have a different set of eyes than Matt LaFleur.
I think the only one that I would have been okay with, who he's very close with, would have been Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
Just because he has a proven track record and he's a really great defensive coordinator. The San Francisco 49ers this past year, he coordinated that defense most of the year without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and they were a very respectable defense. Obviously, they got pounded in the NFC divisional game against Seattle this past weekend. But that was just a matter of Robert Saleh had a lot to do with that defense getting to that point in the season. But Robert Saleh got hired by the Tennessee Titans this week, so he's not available any longer. Gil, who do you want to see, though? Because they've reportedly interviewed former Packers legend Al Harris, who's the Bears defensive backs coach, Jonathan Gannon, who was fired by the Arizona Cardinals, previously was the coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Durante Jones, who's the defensive passing game coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings under Brian Flores. There's expected interest in former Atlanta Falcons head coach Raheem Morris and Jim Leonard, who reportedly was possibly in the running for the job until it went to Joe Barry a few years ago. Matt Eberflus is available. Sean McDermott, he got fired by the Bills. He's available. Who do you want, Gil? Because there are a lot of options out there right now.
I'll tell you, for sentimental reasons, I could say Al Harris, but I don't think he's quite ready yet. I think I think he needs another year or two of seasoning, for lack of a better way to put it. I like his potential. I think he will get an opportunity. But like I said, I don't know if hiring him would be a gamble. And I don't know if the Packers can afford that gamble at this point. At this juncture, I would lean toward Raheem Morris as a first choice, with Leonard being a close second. Both of those guys with head coaching experience, defensive coordinator experience, have been in different systems and different levels of football. To me, those are the kind of guys that I think make the most sense for where this team is right now. How about you?
Well, a week ago, if you asked me, or 6 days ago after we recorded, Brian Flores is number one on my list because he was available, but he's going to return to the Vikings as D coordinator unless he gets a head coaching job elsewhere.
Right.
So that was the guy. That was the one I wanted, that for sure. But I knew that was a pipe dream. Christian Parker was up there too, the defensive passing game coordinator for the Eagles, a guy who coordinated a Super Bowl helped the defensive passing game with a Super Bowl win a couple of years ago, and that defense in Philly was not the reason they lost right away in the playoffs this year. And he had a couple All-Pros and Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell there too. Christian Parker seems like a guy who's definitely a rising star, and he had previous ties Matt LaFleur, but he just got hired to be the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator on Thursday. I would probably lean towards Jim Leonard. I probably lean that way just because of the experience, and he has a very good track record, albeit at the college level mostly. But Durante Jones from Minnesota is a guy I wouldn't mind giving a chance to. I know he doesn't have previous defensive coordinator experience, not yet. But if this guy was Brian Flores' right-hand man, which it sounds like he was, and I love Brian Flores' scheme in Minnesota, I may want that in Green Bay. That'd be a lot of fun, especially with Micah Parsons. And I think that'd be intriguing. Next on my list, and actually maybe number one on my list, but I don't think he's going to be available soon, is Sean McDermott, who got fired by the Bills. Because he could come and be essentially the head coach of the defense. Matt LaFleur gave all the reins to Jeff Hafley the last couple of years, and it landed him a head coaching job. Sean McDermott, if they would hire him, I would definitely welcome it. It'd be very short, but I definitely welcome that too.
I agree. It would be very short. I would welcome it, but I get the feeling he's going to get another head coaching gig if he wants it. And if he doesn't, he'll probably take a year off and maybe do some broadcasting or whatever else he may want to do and just get paid for not coaching for a year and then be a top head coaching candidate. So on paper, I think McDermott would be great. But like you said, I think he'd be even here for less time than Hafley was.
Yeah, he would be. It would not be very long for sure. But if the Packers are in a win now window, why not get the best guy available if he doesn't? There are a ton of head coach openings right now, and there's not a lot of hot coordinator candidates. I mean, you got Clint Kubiak, who's in Seattle, who's probably going to get a job. I'm trying to think. There's another guy too. Brian Dable is probably going to get a job too.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's not a lot of Grant Udinski in Jacksonville. He's possibly the head candidate for the Cleveland Browns too. Not a lot of offensive coordinators though. Not a lot of hotshot young play callers available right now to get hired by teams, and there's a lot of openings. So you're going to see some good coaches go pretty fast within the next few weeks for sure. It's just interesting. What do you think of Jonathan Gannon, though? Because this is a guy who was a Vic Fangio guy, and Vic Fangio is one of the most well-respected defensive coordinators probably in football right now, in football in general. What do you think about a guy like Jonathan Gannon, who learned a lot under Vic Fangio and was a head coach, has led a team, but albeit wasn't a very good team. It wasn't very good teams that he had in Arizona that he led. But what do you think about the possibility of having him maybe in Green Bay? Because I think he'd be around longer than a Sean McDermott.
I think he would be too, and I think he'd be a solid choice because he has head coaching experience, but he also, he didn't do well there in Arizona, but boy, his Philadelphia defenses certainly did well. And he's got the DC experience. I like the head coaching experience. I think someone with head coaching experience could help Matt LaFleur in some of the other areas that he could perhaps, whether it's game management, clock management, using your challenges. So I think, that could be helpful too. He wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd be very happy if they hired him.
Yeah, you just got to trust. After Matt LaFleur was able to hire Jeff Hafley out of left field, out of nowhere, essentially a couple of years ago, I'm going to give a little leeway when he chooses his next defense coordinator because Hafley was a home run hire. And obviously it goes to show that he was a home run hire because he's a head coach now. I'm glad he's in the AFC. I'm glad we're not going to have to deal with him in the NFC. Best of luck to Jeff Hafley, first and foremost. I'm definitely going to miss him. He's the best deep coordinator they probably had since year 2 of Dom Capers when he was in Green Bay. It's been a while since they had a really great D coordinator. Hope they can hit lightning or strike. I hope lightning strikes twice, essentially, Gil. Now, Gil, we talked about who we want as the Packers' next defense coordinator. Who do you think the Packers will hire? Who do you think Matt LaFleur will actually end up hiring?
I think it's going to be Leonard.
You do? Okay.
I do. I think that was kind of the rumored choice when they ended up with Joe Barry, as you said. And I think this will be the second time they'll swing back around and make that choice. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because with Jim Leonard a few years ago, he was in Madison with the Wisconsin Badgers, the defensive coordinator there. And he looked like he was going to be he looked like the head coach in waiting at the time at Wisconsin. Paul Chryst got fired. They promoted him to interim head coach. And it seemed like he was going to be the head coach. They let him go, and they hire Luke Fickell instead to be the head coach. And then now he's in the NFL. He's with the Denver Broncos right now. And it seems like maybe it's a matter where it's like, back then Jim Leonard was thinking, now's not the time. Maybe in a few years, and maybe now it's like, maybe now is the time. The Packers, I think, defensively are in a much better position personnel-wise. And I think the defense is in really good shape on paper, and they just need the right coach to continue essentially just keep the momentum going from what Jeff Hafley built the last couple of years. And Jim Leonhard would be a great choice.
Yeah, I think it would be. We'll see whether or not, that's what they end up doing, but I think it would be a good choice. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I thought initially until Thursday that it was going to be Christian Parker, because supposedly Christian Parker almost got the Packers defensive coordinator job a couple of years ago when they then ended up hiring Jeff Hafley instead of Christian Parker. And I thought it was going to be him, but Dallas obviously really wanted him. They must have put out the full stop for him, essentially because they were able to land him on Thursday. I thought it was going to be him until a few hours ago, Gil. I think it's going to be Leonard or Durante Jones, though. I really do. I think there's so much to respect about the way Brian Flores' his defense flies around, and how chaotic it is, yet organized, and it's so synchronized too. And I think if Durante Jones knows how to run that defense that Brian Flores and knows how to push the buttons like Brian Flores can, I think that could be the guy too. And I wouldn't be upset taking a chance on a guy like that.
No, I mean, if you're going to take a chance, he's the guy I would want to take a chance on. But I don't know right now if it's the right time to take a chance.
Yeah, we'll see. It's I wouldn't be surprised in the next 20 minutes, Gil, right after we get done recording, the Packers are going to announce their next D coordinator.
Nothing would surprise me.
It's probably going to be, by the time we're on next week, the Packers will probably have their new D coordinator announced. So a lot to look forward to. And obviously, we were talking about Matt LaFleur making that choice, most likely. He's the guy who's the brains behind this decision. Hopefully, he makes the right decision. And the Packers, the report is that they agreed to multi-year extensions with Matt LaFleur and general manager Brian Gutekunst. This is after many players voiced a lot of strong support for LaFleur after the season ended. There was a lot of reports of potentially, Matt LaFleur going into his final year of his contract, that maybe he was going to be on his way out, especially after that playoff collapse in Chicago in the playoff opener. Brian Gutekunst got the extension. I think him landing Micah Parsons in that trade right before the season helped matters quite a bit, and he's drafted pretty well overall. Gil, what are your thoughts, though, on the Packers extending LaFleur and Gutekunst? It sounds like a hard commitment for the next few years at a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought it was time to move on from LaFleur after the collapse in the playoffs. But now that he's re-signed, obviously I want him to succeed. It's never been with me. I always supported LaFleur, always liked LaFleur. I just don't know if he can get us over the hump, and that some of the mistakes that he's been making consistently over the years, whether he's able to correct those mistakes. Could the right assistant coach help this team become more disciplined, or the right roster addition where we're not taking those pre-snap penalties, not, coming out of the huddle with 5 seconds left on the play clock and blowing timeouts? All of these little things that have been, helping the Packers beat themselves. To me, I hope that Matt LaFleur can correct them, but the fact that they've been going on for as long as they have is why I'm kind of skeptical about it. But look, the decision has been made. I'm behind Matt LaFleur now 100%. I want to see him succeed. I think he's a good coach. I just don't know if he's a great coach.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And people chiming in the chat where it's like, we committed to playoff collapses, he can't get us over the hump. That's fair criticism. Yeah. That is. But hey, we have no choice but to get behind. We can't do anything about this. We got to get behind and you know what? If you don't want to get behind Matt LaFleur, get behind the players who support Matt LaFleur. Jordan Love is adamant that he's the right coach. Micah Parsons, adamant that he's the right coach. Tucker Kraft, adamant that he's the right coach. Christian Watson, adamant that he's the right coach. Those are your best players. And if they are all in on Matt LaFleur staying as the head coach, I have no other way of putting it. The only way to put it is you got to support that, because those are the guys who are in the trenches. Those are the guys who are in the heat of the battle. You got to support that for sure. I do want to say, though, at a minimum, you got to shake up the coaching staff a little bit. I'm not talking a full shakedown from top to bottom, but you got to, at a minimum, you got to hire a new assistant head coach, a new special teams coordinator. Rich Bisaccia, supposedly he may retire. I'd welcome that big time. And it's interesting. We're looking for the new D coordinator. If you can land a guy like a Sean McDermott or a Jonathan Gannon And you could be like, hey, you'll not just be D coordinator, you will also be associate head coach. And Rich Bisaccia is gone. That is enticing. If you can get a good D coordinator and also give that title of helping with game management situations and just helping with game flow and such like that, that I think at a minimum needs to happen. And also maybe changing up the O-line coach as well. I think they got to move on from Luke Butkus.
Yeah.
Outside of that, there's just got to be some changes, and it starts at associate head coach and special teams coordinator. That at a minimum has to change regardless.
Yeah, it really, really does. And, look, I have seen some articles and some quotes about why Rich Bisaccia isn't as bad as outsiders think he is and all of that. But the bottom line is that the special teams keeps making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And something has to change. I have nothing against Rich Bisaccia personally. He seems like a really nice guy. I've been rooting for him since the time he walked into the door at 1265 Lombardi, but I think it's time.
Yeah, and players love him too, but I think it's past his time for sure. And we need to move on. There needs to be an amicable split or whatever it may be. Obviously, Matt LaFleur has a lot of respect for Rich Bisaccia, but I really think this at a minimum has to change. And you wonder, because the Packers haven't officially announced that these extensions have gone through for Matt LaFleur and for Brian Gutekunst. It sounds like it's pretty much a done deal. It just hasn't been officially reported in any way or officially confirmed by the team. But you got to think that those talks are fluid right now. And there's probably something where it's like, hey, like we'll give you this much money or we'll give you this many years, but you got to make a change. You got to make a change at associate head or something. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that can go into writing, into the devil's in the details, Gil.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. Let's put it that way.
And someone chiming in, yeah, we could have used Cooper DeJean over Lucas Van Ness. Well, Cooper DeJean was in the same draft as Jordan Morgan. And guess what? Jordan Morgan's going to be their starting left tackle next season. I think over time that's going to look to be a really good pick because Rasheed Walker's not coming back. So that's a conversation for another day. Let's just keep talking about the coordinators real quick, Gil. Let's just give some quick grades. First, let's start with the offense. Matt LaFleur and Adam Stenavich. Let's kind of combine this. The head coach, Matt LaFleur, O-coordinator, Adam Stenavich, but LaFleur calls the plays. LaFleur's offense and Stanovich's offense, 15th in total this year, 17th in passing, 15th in rushing, 16th in scoring. Too many times this year where I felt like the offense hit a wall, and there are times where the offense was just humming and looked outstanding. What's your grade for the offense, for the offensive coordinators, for the offensive coaches this year?
I can't go higher than a B at this point. I mean, the inconsistency keeps me from giving them a higher grade. Look, they dealt with some injuries. Obviously, Josh Jacobs was not 100% in the second half of the season. Jordan Love missed a couple of games. But overall, you never got the feeling that this offense was as good as it could have been. Like there was no one game, maybe the Cowboys game, where you said, wow, they really put it all together and just did what they are capable of doing. And I think the real root of the problem was the poor play of the offensive line more than anything else. But I can't go higher than a B. What about you?
You're generous because I said C+. I think the O-line, I think this is probably the worst O-line play I think that Matt LaFleur has ever had in his tenure. And it showed because, hey, you know what? Everything starts up front in football. There's someone chiming in the front where it's like, hey, we focus on defense and pass rush, but our secondary suffering. Every elite defense has the secondary to back it up. Dude, you got to start with the trenches, man. Like that's it. You go inside out. That's my opinion. Everything starts up front. And the Packers offense is a prime example where the O-line was just not very good. The only reason I didn't give I just felt like this offense was very average. They took a step back this year. Yeah. The only reason I gave a C+ though instead of a C is because Jordan Love got better and Malik Willis has clearly improved as well. The quarterback spot was not the problem this year at all. No. It was definitely the O-line. I think the receiver position is in really good shape. Tight end obviously was just decimated with injury, especially after the Tucker Kraft season ender. And then the running game was just not efficient. I don't think that was really on Josh Jacobs. I think that was on the O-line more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously get to more analysis on this in a future show, but to put it succinctly, if you look at the analytics, Josh Jacobs was still gaining yards after first contact. It's just that first contact was very often behind the line of scrimmage as opposed to 2 or 3 yards in front of it. And that makes a big difference.
It's not sustainable. Not sustainable in today's NFL. It really isn't. No. So they gotta get better up front. That's for sure. Let's go to the defense. Jeff Hafley, former Packers D coordinator, now next Miami Dolphins head coach. Hafley's defense, 12th in total defense, 11th against the pass, 18th against the run, 11th in scoring. Defense dropped from 6th overall to 12th overall in 2025 from 2024. This defense, though, hummed, Gil, when Micah Parsons was playing as expected. What's your grade for Jeff Hafley this year?
Again, with Hafley, again, injuries enter into it. Everyone talks about the loss of Micah Parsons, and obviously that was huge. But the loss of Devontae Wyatt, to me, was a big turning point for this defense. And even Parsons himself said, you can't replace this guy. And unfortunately, he was right. They lost that anchor in the middle, and the play of the defense overall dropped. You didn't have as much pressure coming from the interior. And that's when the cornerbacks started to get exposed, because what would happen is you get the rush off the edge, the quarterback would step up in the pocket and then complete a 15, 20-yard pass, and our cornerbacks would either, be beaten or not make the tackle or whatever the case might be. So I guess I'm going with a B-, taking the entirety of the season into consideration, but injuries played a large role.
I'm a little more bullish on defense with Hafley than you are with that grade. I'm giving Hafley a B. I thought he, like I was saying earlier in this episode, he got the most out of the defense, which didn't have reliable cornerback play and extremely little quality depth along the interior D-line, especially after Devontae Wyatt's season-ending injury. And he dealt with the knee injury earlier in the year too. It was definitely, you felt that loss for sure, because he's a key cog, man. He's so important, and there's a reason why the Packers are probably going to give him a contract extension, because he's really, really good. This defense in general, they didn't generate a lot of turnovers, but they still played very well overall. And the plan that Jeff Hafley worked for the most part. And the defense, they had two All-Pros. Micah Parsons, obviously a first-team All-Pro and finalist for the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And then Xavier McKinney, who was a second-team All-Pro at safety. So there was a lot of good things that happened with this defense, albeit limitations at corner, very little depth along the interior D-line, a lot of injuries in general. So I think Hafley deserves a B.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that way too. And then one of the articles I was writing this week, I was doing the research. With the addition of Micah Parsons, who played 13 games this year, our number of sacks went down dramatically from last year. I mean, it was like from the mid-40s to the mid-30s in 17 games. I was kind of surprised by that.
I do think when Parsons was in the lineup, you saw opposing offenses get the ball a hell of a lot quicker, though. So I think that was a huge factor too, where they just knew it's like, yep, if this ball is not out in 3 seconds, Micah's going to get us, or because if Micah Parsons' impact was definitely felt. The guy had so many pressures every game. If he wasn't even getting to the quarterback, he was still rushing the offense, and just getting opposing quarterbacks off schedule. That's what you want from a premier edge rusher. And that's exactly what he did.
The only maybe reservation I have when I held him a little below the B, and it was close. I'm not saying it was a bad B-. It was closer to a B.
Sure.
But I think he relied too much on Parsons in some ways, that adding Parsons took away some of the originality. I mean, all of a sudden, Edgerrin Cooper wasn't being used the same way he was a year ago. His number of big plays went down. Xavier McKinney's big plays went down. I just think there was a little too much reliance on Micah Parsons. And then when Parsons went down, the whole thing just fell apart.
I feel like that's always the battle for D coordinators, what to do, where, hey, rush forward, drop 7 back in coverage, or bring an extra blitzer and possibly leave someone wide open. That's the chess match you play with opposing offenses all the time. And hey, the offense has the advantage. They know where they're going all the time. The defense has to react. So it's just a matter of, there's very few play calls on the defensive side that are going to win you games or lose you games. It's just a matter of who can react faster and who can rally the football faster. And then let's wrap it up with special teams. Rich Bisaccia, obviously the special teams coordinator, has been just very lackluster. What's your grade for Rich Bisaccia?
I got to go D+. Just special teams cost this team at least 2 or 3 games this year. Hurt them in the playoff game when they missed not only the kicks, but the poor punt coverage. And this unit just doesn't seem to get any better. I think part of it is that Gutekunst doesn't prioritize special teams the way maybe some other teams do. But ultimately, even if Rich Bisaccia didn't have gourmet ingredients, he's got to at least make a good meal out of it, what he's got, and he never really managed to do that. I'm
giving Bisaccia a D. It would be an F, but Daniel Whalen is awesome.
Yes.
Daniel Whalen is an awesome punter. I'm surprised he wasn't all pro first or second team, because that guy is amazing. And Rich Bisaccia, I'll give him his flowers there. He had a lot to do with Daniel Whalen's development, because they brought this kid in. He took the job from a veteran in Patrick O'Donnell a few years ago, and he looks like he's going to be the punter for the long term for the Green Bay Packers. He's a terrific punter, but Brandon McManus obviously took a big step back. The special teams, like you said, Gil, big factor in why they lost or tied in one game too. It's a D for Rich Bisaccia. I feel like special teams is just a cursed unit, no matter who's coordinating. It just doesn't matter. But yeah, just the penalties, the constant the constant mix-up in coverage and blocking and everything. It's just a disaster over and over again.
Can we learn to count to 11? I mean, some plays, it's like, oh, we only had 10 guys on the field. We had 12 guys on the field. Just get the right guys. Let's just start with getting the right guys on the field, right? I mean,
yeah, it's rough. It's just rough. It's got to get better. But all right, I'm done talking about negatives, Gil. Let's get some positives to wrap up this episode. Tell us what we got cooking on Packers Post at cheeseheadtv.com.
Well, over on Packers Post, I'm going position by position and giving grades for each position group on the season, the players' strengths and weaknesses, what their potential roles are next year. And at Cheesehead TV, I did a piece on why I think that Sean Ryan may be the most likely player out of all the potential UFAs to be back in a Packers uniform.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of guys who are set to hit the open market in a couple months. Sean Ryan, yeah, that's a piece you may want to bring back, but we'll see. Go check out Gil's stuff. Hey, how about some trivia?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Championship Sunday, it's upon us. The top-seeded Denver Broncos will host the second-seeded New England Patriots for the AFC title. And on the other side, the top-seeded Seattle Seahawks will host the fifth-seeded LA Rams for the NFC title. Gil, how many former Packers are currently on the 53-man rosters for the 4 remaining teams?
Oh, boy.
It's a very small amount.
3.
You're close. It's 2. Can you name the 2?
No.
I bet you could probably name one for sure.
Okay. Well, Devontae Adams is one.
Yes.
So that's the easy one. Who's the other?
The other one, he was only in Green Bay for 1 year, and that's Seattle Seahawks defensive tackle Jaron Reed.
Okay.
Of course, we know about Adams, one of the greatest wide receivers in Packers history. In his first season with the Rams, he caught 60 passes for 789 yards and scored 14 touchdowns this season. Reed spent the 2022 season with the Packers, played in every game that year, registered 2.5 sacks. Reed's first 5 years in the NFL were with the Seahawks, and he's been with the Seahawks for the last 3 years after leaving the Packers. Now, Gil, I'll ask you this. Of the 4 remaining teams, do you know how many players are on those teams' practice squads right now?
That are former Packers?
How many former Packers?
2.
Yeah, 4. 4, actually.
Ooh.
Can you name any?
No.
Okay. Well, Mercedes Lewis is on Denver's practice squad.
Still?
He still is. Yep. He's been on and off that roster.
Yeah, it's like
keep track. Former Packer legend Shamar John Charles is on Seattle's practice squad.
Okay.
As well as, and then for the Rams, defensive tackle Jack Heflin and offensive lineman Royce Newman. They are both on the Rams practice squad.
Wow,
so,
Royce Newman is still in the NFL.
Yeah, he's not on a 53-man roster because, my feelings on Royce Newman. And my wife knows my feelings on Royce Newman too many times. Jack Heflin was a guy I thought he was gonna be like a Dean Lowry, I thought, in Green Bay.
Yeah, that was just Yeah,
I thought he was going to be like a solid rotational D lineman who was going to grind his way to like a nice career. But he's been bouncing around from practice squad to practice squad. What do they call him? Like trash can full of garbage or something like that. Trash can full of it's something with a trash can. That's his nickname. I remember that.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Newman.
Yeah. Royce Newman. Yeah, probably a nice guy, but I was glad to see his days in Green Bay come to an end when they did.
I understand.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with D coordinator though, Gil. I'm excited. I don't know what direction they're going to go. We think we know what direction they're going to go, but we don't know. Nobody had Jeff Hafley on their radar a couple of years ago, and it turned out
on anybody's bingo card, that's for sure. But I'm glad they picked him, and let's see, what ends up happening. But it's a major hire, and the concern is you don't want this team when they're in the middle of contending to take a step back. That's the one thing you don't want to see. If there's an adjustment period for a new DC, I'm hoping it's for like 7 or 8 games rather than for a whole season.
Yeah, for sure. Gil, I'm going to say, get us out of here because guess what? The sooner we get out of here, the sooner the Packers are probably going to name the next D coordinator. So, hey, we're like, by the time this, people who are tuning in live, thank you so much for tuning in. Obviously, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies. Look for us on YouTube on the Packers Talk Network. But those who are listening on a delay, it's probably gonna be like, oh, they hired this guy. It's like, well, we record on Thursdays. So it's just, so ease up on us. All right. So
yeah. Well, that's it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at GilPackers and at GBPackersSean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show, and thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.